first female speaker, as well as maybe also one of our more exciting ones for this afternoon session. So in the interest of gender balance, we're definitely going to have more women on the stage. So our next speaker, the third one today, will be Kun Mary Sarindhorn, Mativachranon. Briefly, her biography is very interesting, but I won't take up too much of her time. She is a Thai entrepreneur and a grandmother who was a late convert to Roman Catholicism, having been baptized in 1996 when she was already 55 years old. Yet it was her faith in Christ that sustained her through the tumult of her life when she faced charges for a crime that she did not commit. Having been cleared of all accusations, Mary has recorded her life and faith experiences in a best-selling book called Moving the Mountain, inspiring others to find God through her example. Mary will be sharing with us her life testimony of her great faith in God, despite her grim circumstances. And her topic is playing on the theme of our convention. Instead of come and see, she will be talking about come and be. Please give a warm round of applause to welcome Kun Mary.
Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, Reverend Fathers, brothers, sisters, dear brothers and sisters in Christ. สวัสดีค่ะ You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. John chapter 15, verse 16. Yes. With this verse from the Bible, here I am standing before you, a humble witness, born a Buddhist, but a very devout and faithful servant of God nowadays. And it is because of God's love and divine mercy that a life of mine, which was torn apart, accused of a crime I did not commit, and shunned by society, is able to forgive, turn around, and come back to be who I am today. Let me share with you my life story, which is more intriguing than a novel. I was born the youngest daughter of my family, whose parents were devout Buddhists. However, they sent their 3 daughters to Catholic girls' schools taught by the Ursuline sisters. Looking back, it was God's plan to plant the seeds of faith in me since my childhood. After high school, I went to the United States of America and graduated with an honors degree in business administration in 1969 at the age of 20. Later, I became very successful being the co-founder and first managing director of one of the largest finance and securities companies in Thailand at the age of 25. 5 years later, I became the largest shareholder of the company when the chairman wanted to retire early and sold all his shares to me. At the age of 30, I was at the top of the world. At that time, I had no way of knowing that I had to be successful at such a young age so that I could fail, buried alive, and be able to come back after 20 years. Imagine if I were successful at the age of 50, what would be left of me when I returned at the age of 70? Less than a year after I acquired the company, the Stock Exchange of Thailand crashed for the first time. Forced by the circumstances, I decided to sell all my portion of the shares at a tremendous loss back to the bank of my former chairman, who sold all his shares to me only a year earlier. To save the money of the depositors, many of whom were Catholic schools, I was willing to sacrifice myself. Having brought the ship back safely to shore, I resigned. 2 weeks before the new managing director took office, something unimaginable happened. I was held at a meeting room, forced by an influential bank director to sign some documents. Seeing that it was not ethical, I steadfastly refused. After 7 hours, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., without any food nor drinks, the bank director had to let me go. Before I left the meeting room, pointing his fingers at me, he said, "One day you will be sorry." Little did I know that what I did or did not do that day would cost me 20 years of my life. Later, this man became the new chairman of the company, and he was true to his words. One day, I got the shock of my life when I was tipped off that an arrest warrant was on the way for me for allegedly embezzling my former company a staggering amount of 196 million baht, or approximately $7.84 million at that time. A former employee of mine, whose wedding was officiated by me, was willing to give false testimonies to the police in exchange for a promotion. While all accused are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court, I could be jailed rotten if I could not produce enough bail. Where could I obtain that amount of money for bail? Having no choice, I took the first plane out of Thailand the next morning, leaving my 4 young children and husband behind. As soon as the plane took off, I cried in my heart, "God, I am innocent. I am innocent. In all truth, I tell you, one of you is going to betray me." John chapter 13, verse 21. My life from that point on was like that of the doctor played by Harrison Ford in the movie The Fugitive. Fearing I might be arrested, I moved from place to place, some days eating just one meal. At night, I would be too scared to sleep. My life as a pitiful fugitive went on till December 25, 1989. Having been awake the whole previous night, I went to sleep late in the morning and woke up around 7 p.m. I was starved. It was pitch dark outside and it was cold, very cold and raining. When I came back to my room empty-handed because all shops and restaurants were closed, I was hungry and angry. I became hysterical and started cursing the man who put me through this suffering, and the lawyer and the false witness who were both my previous employees. I started writing letters and sending by fax call collect to my husband, telling him how much I was suffering. When he curtly replied that I was costing him too much in sending him many pages of fax, I put down the phone. I must have temporarily gone insane at that point and saw my own life less worthy than the dust on the floor. I ran around my 3x4 meter room like a mad woman, looking for something, a knife, a rope, anything that could end my miserable being. When I could not find any, I knelt down in the middle of the floor and cried out to the Lord, "Dear God, please come and take me to be with you. I can't go on living anymore." Saint Teresa of Calcutta once said, "Being unwanted, unloved, uncared for, forgotten by everybody, I think that is a much greater hunger, a much greater poverty than the person who has nothing to eat." Yes, dear brothers and sisters in Christ, that was exactly how pitiful my life was during that stage. At that time, I was still a Buddhist officially, But throughout my ordeal, I prayed feverishly night and day to God for His help. That night, I did not know how long I was kneeling there, but was jolted awake when a thought flashed through my mind without my awareness. Don't give up, my child. One day the truth will prevail. God has a mission for you. I jumped up from the floor. Did someone just speak to me? Or was I hallucinating? There was no one in the room except me. Then it dawned on me that though I was suffering beyond words, I was still free, wasn't I? Besides, every time I thought I had come to the end of the rope, there would be a retrieve. There couldn't be any other explanation. It must be God who had been taking care of me and had just spoken to me. None of the trials which have come upon you is more than a human being can stand. You can trust that God will not let you be put to the test beyond your strength. But with any trial, we also provide a way out by enabling you to put up with it. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. I knelt down again and prayed, Dear God, if it's you who have just spoken to me, I'll be and do whatever you want me to. Then I prostrated. Just as I did that, a righteous thought came into my mind. If I was to continue living, I must first forgive. But how? Only moments ago, I was cursing them to death. After trying the whole night, I prayed again. Dear God, I want to forgive my enemies, but I cannot do it on my own. Please help me be able to do so. What happened next was something I would remember as long as I live. As soon as I finished my prayers, the feeling of hatred in my heart, like a fire in the desert, was blown away. Instead, a breeze of coolness, like the first fall of snow, swept through my heart. It was wonderful. I felt redeemed and refreshed. I knew immediately a miracle had happened. God had touched my soul with His love. I was able to forgive all my enemies through His blessings. I was ecstatic and cried the tears of joy and excitement the whole night. Later, I even prayed for God's blessings for all of my enemies and their families. Be generous to one another, sympathetic, forgiving each other as readily as God forgave you in Christ. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. I was to remain living the life of a fugitive in exile till the statute of limitations expired before I could return to Thailand. Though I could not be arrested on criminal charges, I was sued in the civil court as well. When one lawyer after another wanted to charge me millions, I remembered what I heard on the night of December 25, 1989. One day the truth will prevail. I had God. Why would I need any lawyer? My faith was so strong that I could call it a blind faith. I decided to go to court defending myself. Believing that God helped those who helped themselves, I decided to head back to my former company to petition for justice. Another uphill battle had just begun. In truth, I tell you, if your faith is the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Matthew chapter 17, verses 20 to 21. From the former top boss of the company, I was reduced to being just an ex-con woman. I would go there in the morning, day after day, hoping to get an appointment with someone. Nobody would see me. The board shunned me like a stray dog. The humiliation was so heart-wrenching, that at times I thought I could not go on. However, I dare not get discouraged. If I did, I would return to ashes. I prayed vehemently with my unconditional faith till one Monday. On January 17, 1994, as usual, I went to see the director of the legal department of my former company. Ignoring his secretary's refusal for me to see him, I barged into his room and presented him with a list of documents I said would prove my innocence. He shook his head. It has been 14 years. All documents had been destroyed. Without premeditation, I blurted out, "Then let me go and search your storeroom myself." Nothing could be more absurd than that statement. However, nothing is impossible with God. Luke chapter 1, verse 37. Accompanied by 5 of the company's staff, I was allowed to go to the specially built and well-guarded storage of the company. The legal director gave the permission so that he could rid himself of me, the nuisance, once and for all, because he was sure after that day I could not go to see him again. Within only 2 hours, however, I was able to dig out the evidence that would prove my innocence beyond any doubts. One of my former staff was ordered to destroy all the documents, but for some reason she did not, but reported to the chairman who ordered her that she did. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. The board of directors learned of the fact at their next board meeting with shock and disbelief. They were stunned and speechless. One of them remarked, "We have killed an innocent woman." Their resolution was to withdraw the case from the civil court immediately, and also asked me not to sue them back. Though penniless and desperate, I remembered the night of December 25, 1989, when I was able to forgive them because of God's grace. Against everyone's advice, I decided not to sue them back for any amount of money, though I could have sued them for millions of baht in damages. To my husband, who could not understand my decision, I simply said, "It's between me and God." On March 21st, 1994, I walked out of the courtroom for the last time as an innocent person. Even the sky cried the tears of joy for me. It rained the whole morning. And so it ended. So had everything. For the past decade, I told myself I could not die before I could prove my innocence. Now that the truth was known, there was nothing but emptiness. My former company went back on their words on publicizing the truth about this case. Why my former colleagues were then millionaires or chairmen of various companies. I was a forgotten woman, wounded physically, spiritually, and financially. I could not even read business newspapers without crying. All I had for myself was self-pity. It was the prisoner of war syndrome. As if the cross I was carrying was not heavy enough, an extra weight was added onto my shoulders. Shortly after my court case ended, and before I was able to heal or recover financially, Thailand suffered the economic meltdown. At the time when I needed him most in my life, my husband walked out of the family, leaving me to care for our 4 children alone. With the deep wound still fresh in my heart, my life at that point was like a beautiful porcelain vase being thrown to the floor and stomped upon by a strong rogue man. There was nothing left but pieces thrown around. I wanted to take my own life again. During those painful years, whenever they saw me cry, my children would hug me, wiped my tears, and said, "Mommy, don't cry. We love you. We promise we'll be good children. We will study hard and make you proud of us one day." I pulled them close, hugged them, and told them I loved them too. Today, both my daughters, who are now grown up, are here with me. My younger daughter, Jan, has accompanied me to every country that invites me to speak, to give me moral support, and to help me with the PowerPoint work like today. The only two things that kept me going at that point were God's and my children's love. Alone, scared, and desperate, I turned to God. I prayed every day, begging God to please help carry me over the troubled waters safely. Thinking there were millions of people praying to God's help each day, I was afraid my prayers would not be heard, as I was not a Christian yet. So I wrote a lot of prayers too, pouring my heart out to God, hoping that my written prayers could help get God's attention. Evidently, it did. One day, God spoke to me again. Thailand was hosting the first big game, the sport event for the disabled. Before the games started, the head of the Thai team, a man with a missing leg, said on television, "No one wants to be born disabled. However, if we could accept this fact of life, we could live a normal life." It was like an unlit bulb being turned on. The key to solve my psychological problem was that I must be able to accept what had happened to me. So what that society shunned me? So what that I was a single mother? I still had 10 fingers, a perfect body, and a sound mind. Deny. I could not go back to change my past, but I could live the present and shape my future. That night, I prayed the whole night again. The truth had now prevailed. It's time to move on and find out what God's mission for me was. If I continued living in this sorry state of mind, God's miracle to me would be a waste. I started searching for God officially and was introduced to go to a Protestant church. After a while, I had to find a new church as I could not understand the language used in the church, Mandarin. Then another friend introduced me to another Protestant church. I was so happy and I was sure that church was the right path for me. For 3 years, I went diligently with my children to this latter church, attended the Bible classes, and immersed myself fully in the Protestant way of life of evangelization. Time passed. I was like a lost child who thought he had found his home, only to discover there was a canal surrounding the house without a bridge. Then another friend led me to study catechism with a Catholic priest. Within 6 months, on June the 2nd, 1996, I flew to New Rochelle, New York, to be baptized at the chapel of my former teacher, an American nun. As my godmother, she said lovingly to me, "God finally catches up with you, Sarindhorn." Feeling ecstatic, I was eager to channel all my energies into serving God. At the same time, I desperately wanted to heal. I went to see a psychiatrist, only to realize it would take me a long time and a lot of money to be clinically healed. I learned that the key element in healing was to open up to the wound to someone. Besides the long route of seeing a psychiatrist, did I have an alternative choice? 27 years ago, giving testimony was not a Catholic way of life, but within the circle of the Protestant church that I attended, they wanted to have me back and hear my testimonies. My children told me they were proud of me, not ashamed of me for what had happened. A lifelong devotion of being a witness had begun. At the same time, I followed the discipline and Catholic way of life to the strictest sense, thinking that the only way to serve God was through serving under the religious organizations. I joined almost all organizations you could think of. I became the Secretary General of CBEC Catholic Business Executive Group, first VP of the Catholic Women's Association, Treasurer of Catholic Commission for Women, founder of Hotline, the support group under the auspices of the Catholic Association of Thailand, etc. At that time, I did not even understand the meaning of the word vocation. And all was not lost with my 3 years at the Protestant church. I carried my thirst and quest for Bible study to my life as a Catholic, though at that time there was no Catholic Bible. Night after night, I studied the Bible. Gradually, I came to know God more and more. My initial fear of God diminished. Finally, I discovered that God was not fearsome and far away in heaven. Instead, God is loving and is in our heart, everyone's heart. It was the most precious discovery for me. It should be the biggest discovery for mankind. During the long span of my suffering, besides praying incessantly to God, begging Him to please help me heal, I also wrote my little prayers in addition to my daily prayers. Even after I was miraculously exonerated, I continued writing. When a senior member of a church asked to publish them in his church's Sunday bulletin, I felt my writing alone was not adequate. I then thought of what I read in Guidepost, a Christian publication I read in the USA. In every chapter, which was real life story, there was a verse from the Bible. It turned out to be an utmost blessing for me, as I had to study the Bible attentively in order to find the right verse for each of my prayers. My little prayers were so well received by readers, both Christians and non-Christian, that later the first 100 chapters were published as a book, my first book. It was printed 3 times. The books were distributed free of charge nationwide among Catholic as well as Protestant churches and even Buddhist organizations. The director priest of St. Louis Hospital put my book besides the Bible in each of the 300 rooms of the hospital. A Protestant radio operator in the northern province of Thailand asked for my permission to read my little prayers 1 chapter per day on his daily broadcast, etc. I continue writing my little prayers till today. My bi-monthly prayers are published officially in the website thaicatholicbible.com and in Udom San, our church's official magazine. I also have a list of direct recipients, both by emails and postal mails. Then one day, there were calls for us to practice Duk in autumn. Around that same time, I learned of the meaning of the word vocation. I learned that as Christians, we could serve God through our daily lives, through whatever we could do best, not necessarily only through religious organizations. Really? Thailand is a predominantly Buddhist country, with 95% of its population being Buddhist. Out of the population of approximately 70 million people, only 350,000 are Catholic, or a mere 0.5%. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Luke chapter 10, verse 2. I decided to go into the Thai society to evangelize, using my life story as a bridge. As a businesswoman and associate judge of the Labor Court, Region 2 of Thailand, and a socialist. I evangelized to the business circle, the judiciary society, the political arena, and even to the military junta, and to anyone whenever I have a chance. Before my 60th birthday celebration in 2009, I decided to write a book about my life story to glorify God. It was in Thai with the title, Moving the Mountain. This book became very popular to the point that Post Books, the publishing arm of Bangkok Post, Thailand's oldest English newspaper, approached me to buy the rights of my books. It was a blessing beyond any words. To evangelize among my Buddhist friends, before all else, I try to live my life in such a way that people can see how a good Christian should be, forgiving, loving, faithful, etc. I am firm and solid in my faith, but I never try to convince others to convert or to believe in my God. I tell people what God has done for me. People can see how I am today. Whether they believe God is real is up to them. Gradually, my evangelization in the Thai society takes root. My subtle way of proclaiming the good wills works. All those who come to know me respect me for who I am, a faithful Christian with unwavering faith, but not someone out to convert others. An Air Force general remarked to me he wished his Buddhist friends could be as faithful religiously as I was. A director general told me I had become her source of knowledge of something that seemed like an alien to her previously. A lawyer who is Buddhist begged to have a confession with me, to ask for our God's forgiveness for something he did years ago, but still feels guilty. In Buddhism, there is no atonement for any sin once committed. The former legal director of my former company remarked that anyone who came to know me could not say there was no God. I was interviewed on the radio of Parliament, which broadcasts nationwide on the program Religion and Democracy. I was invited to appear on a very popular TV program, Jai, the first time a Catholic was able to speak about God on a national TV. I was invited to lecture many times on the subject of the history of Thai monarchs and Christianity by Thailand's #1 university. A group of my friends have started a chat line to propagate Buddhism. I asked to join the line and occasionally send word of God from the Bible to let them know what Jesus teaches us. My friends are thrilled. A Protestant preacher who invites me to give sharing speeches at her Baptist church regularly was ecstatic when she called me one day. Because of my book, Moving the Mountain, 2 of the newcomers to her church agreed to be baptized. The list could go on. In summary, through me, some of the Thai elites have come to know God and Christianity, many of them for the first time. Later, I learned that what I have been doing is in line with Pope Francis' teaching of new evangelization. I have been very busy serving God that I did not have time to look at my wound. By the time I do, I find that the pain in my heart is gone. I am completely healed. Life is not perfect, but life is beautiful. Looking back, I likened my experiences to that of someone who was thrown into a ravaging river. Submerging in the middle of the rapid current, I was struggling to stay afloat. I saw Jesus standing on the shore, watching me attentively. I cried out to him for help. Instead of jumping into the river and rescued me, he would throw materials, sometimes a log, sometimes a piece of wood, to me. Finally, When I was able to swim ashore, he was there smiling and welcoming me with his open arms. By watching over me, but letting me learn how to swim myself, Jesus had made me a competent and capable swimmer. I also discovered that the virtue of forgiveness benefits the forgiver, not the forgiven. Forgiving is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is the sign of strength. It frees the person who forgives from the chain that ties the person to the pole near the fire of hatred. It is not easy to forgive your enemy. I also find out that it is much, much more difficult to forgive someone whom you love but betray you. However, once you are able to do so, you are free. You can walk away from the bonfire and breathe fresh air again. Meantime, the Catholic way of evangelization also evolves. I have been invited to speak about my life story in almost every diocese in Thailand. When Thailand was the host of the AACOM II, the Second Asian Apostolic Congress on Mercy, in October 2012, I was the choice as the keynote speaker. Since then, I have been invited to speak 9 times within the period of 6 years as a witness of God's divine mercy internationally. I was a witness speaker in the Philippines 7 times, in Indonesia 1 time, and in Colombia 1 time. Starting in 2013, I spoke at PACOM II, the Second Philippines Apostolic Congress on Mercy in Cagayan de Oro. In 2014, in Bogota, Colombia, at WACOM III, the Third World Apostolic Congress on Mercy. In 2015, in Medan, Indonesia, at AACOM III. In 2006, at the 51st IEC, the 51st International Eucharistic Congress in Cebu, Philippines. In the same year, 2016, at PACOM III in Bacolod, Philippines. In the same year, 2016, I was invited to be the guest speaker at the gala dinner in Cebu to raise funds to build a school for the poor children in Samar, Western Philippines, replacing the old building abolished by typhoon. In summary, I went to the Philippines 3 times in 2016 to speak. In 2017, back to Manila, Philippines at WACOM IV. Also in 2017, at WACOM III, the Third Visaya Apostolic Congress on Mercy in Iloilo, Philippines. And in 2018, at the WACOM I, the first Region 8 Apostolic Congress on Mercy in Tacloban, Philippines. A priest from the Philippines who had been at all the Divine Mercy Congresses came up to me at the last Congress and said, "I have listened to your testimony for the 6th time and still want to hear more." Of all the venues that I went to give testimony, the farthest destination was WACOM III in Bogota, Colombia in August 2014. It took me and my 2 children who accompanied me 32 hours one way to fly from Bangkok to Bogota. The convention that had the most audience attendance was the 51st IEC in Cebu. There were over 15,000 participants attending the convention from 71 countries around the world. I humbly pray to God that I will go to the end of the world to be a witness of His love and divine mercy. And He has given me opportunities that I never imagined were possible. With my witnessing outside Thailand, there were demands to read my book by the international audience. So I decided to write my book, Moving the Mountain, in English. It was published on Amazon.com so that the book could be read anywhere in the world. And with God's providence, the English version of my book in paperback was published by the Diocese of Bacolod, Philippines in 2016. I donated the proceeds from the sale of all my books to the diocese. At the time of the economic crisis in Thailand in 1997, I was very desperate financially, having just started a small business. However, with my unconditional faith and earnest prayers, I was able to pull through the economic crunch miraculously. Today, I'm the chairwoman of 2 companies manufacturing shower enclosures and tempered and laminated glass. My children joined me in our businesses. Who would have thought a troubled family like ours and a broken woman like me would be healed and blessed like this today? I might have lost 2 decades of my life, but I can say now that it was a blessing in disguise. Today, I am having a special kind of fever, Jesus fever, the kind of fever that I do not want its degree to subside no matter what. If your heart is full of good news and Jesus Christ, it will spill over. You can keep it for yourself. If someone asked me to introduce myself today, I'd go like this. I am a faithful servant of God, a happy grandmother and mother, a businesswoman, and an amateur artist, in that order. I even use my hobbies to evangelize nowadays. I give my paintings to churches and convents and donate proceeds from the auction of my artworks, both in painting and photography, to charities. The official website, ThaiCatholicBible.com, has a column specifically for my religious paintings called Art for God. All the walls in my home are adorned with my paintings. I even select some verses from the Bible to paint. All my Bible-inspired paintings are hung in my studio. Whenever I have friends or guests visiting my home and my studio, I can evangelize. Some of the verses that I choose to paint are, love your enemy, Luke chapter 6, verse 27. The next painting has 2 verses in it. Suppose one of you have 100 sheep and lose one of them, Luke chapter 15, verse 4, and the parable of the lost son, Luke chapter 15, verse 11. The black sheep in Jesus' arm is me. Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6. I am the true vine. John chapter 15, verse 1. Ask, and it will be given to you. Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. Also Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. His praise will always be on my lips. Psalm chapter 34, verse 1. Blessed is a man who listens to me. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 34. Then came 2019, before the outbreak of the pandemic COVID-19. Serendipitously, I had the chance to refresh the project regarding food waste, which I initiated with one of my former teachers, an American Muslim sister, 13 years ago. But she went to heaven before the project took off. With the kindness and assistance of His Eminence Cardinal Francis Xavier Grangsak, Govitwanit, Archbishop of Bangkok this time, in 2020, I set up a foundation called We Share Foundation, with the objectives of serving as a matchmaker for food donors and food recipients to utilize the excess and leftover from the food supply chain, and also to share the global effort to reduce food waste. The project was blessed by Pope Francis during his visit to Thailand in November 2019, during my private audience with the Holy Father, to present him with one of my paintings and my book in English. This project is also in line with the Pope's call for Laudato Si and synodality, cooperation between the religious and laity 2 years later. From March the 1st, 2021, the day We Share Foundation started its operation till May 31st, 2023. We Share was able to rescue 110,000 plus kilos and 34,000 plus boxes of excess food that was still edible but otherwise would be thrown away as food waste, and made it into 274,000 plus meals for the less privileged and the vulnerable people of many dioceses and also of all religions around Thailand. Yesterday, I donated 4,500 sets of children's clothing and 300 blankets to His Excellency Bishop Francis Xavier Veerapornrat, Bishop of Chiang Mai Diocese, to give to the needy children under the care of his diocese. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 7 to 8. In October 2019, I was invited to be an honorary advisor of the Committee on Religion, Morality, Ethics, Art, and Culture of the Senate, the position which I hold till today. On August 26, 2022, I was awarded the National Moral Award 2021, individual category. In his apostolic letter, Salve Fici Doloris, Saint Pope John Paul II wrote, "Do not let suffering pull you down. What if we could turn the tables on suffering, not by eliminating our pain altogether, but by doing something to give it purpose and meaning? What if we could do good through our suffering? This is precisely what our relationship with Jesus Christ empowers us to do. This is exactly what I have been doing since my conversion. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified." Romans chapter 8, verse 30. To Jesus' call, "Come and be," I humbly reply, "Here I am, Lord."
Thank you very much, Kun Mary Sarindhorn, for your very powerful and beautiful testimony of Christ's abounding love and mercy. I'm sure a lot of you have questions, but again, please save them until 4 o'clock. Kun Mary Sarindhorn will be up on the stage with our other speakers and will be available for your questions and comments. For the moment, though, we're running slightly over time, but we do have time for some coffee break, just to wake you up before our next speaker. So please go to your coffee break and return by 10 past 3.